I've never told this story in full. Not to my family, not to the guys at the shop, not even to my therapist. But 2 years is long enough to carry something alone. And tonight, well, tonight I'm 3 whiskeys deep and the wind outside sounds too much like November in the woods. So here it is. Trevor and I had been doing the Mount Hood trip for 7 years straight. Every second weekend of November, we'd load up my F-150, drive 3 hours east from Portland, and disappear into the Zigzag River area for 4 days of elk hunting and bullshitting around a fire. It was sacred, a ritual, 2 guys escaping wives, deadlines, and the constant hum of civilization. That year, 2022, we arrived on a Friday, right around 11 in the morning. The sky was that specific Oregon gray that looks like the underside of a dirty mattress. Temperature hovered somewhere around 35 degrees, cold enough to see your breath, not cold enough to freeze the ground solid. We set up camp about a quarter mile off the main forest road, tucked against a creek that ran fast and loud over black rocks. REI half-dome tent, 2 sleeping pads, a cooler of steaks and beer. My Remington 700 was in the truck, Trevor's Winchester Model 70 beside it. Standard setup. 4 days of nothing, Trevor said, lighting his pipe. Yeah, he's that guy, and grinning through the smoke. I need this. I remember thinking, this is perfect. If I could reach back through time and shake myself by the shoulders, I would. Saturday morning came clear and cold. No rain, thank God, but the damp had settled into everything, our jackets, our boots, the canvas of the tent. Trevor made coffee on the camp stove while I checked the map. We planned to push north along an old logging track that eventually faded into game trails, about 3 miles out, maybe 4. Good elk country. We left the truck at 9. I took the Remington, Trevor carried his Winchester. We both had sidearms, old habits from guys who'd run into cougars before. Trevor wore his orange beanie, I had my lucky Carhartt jacket with the tear in the left elbow. The first hour was routine. Wet ferns brushing our legs, the occasional raven croaking somewhere overhead, our boots crunching on gravel, then mud, then pine needles. Normal sounds, normal forest. Then Trevor stopped. Ben. I was maybe 20 feet ahead, scanning a clearing. Yeah? Come look at this. He was standing next to an old cedar, maybe 4 feet across at the base. His gloved finger was tracing something carved into the bark at eye level. It was a crude arrow, but upside down, pointing at the ground instead of the sky. Huh. I stepped closer, ran my own thumb over the cut. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't ancient either. Maybe a year old, 2. The bark had started to heal around the edges. Probably the Ranger Service marking a diseased tree. You know they do that. With an upside-down arrow? I shrugged. Maybe it means cut this one down instead of leave it. I don't know, man. It's a mark on a tree. Trevor stared at it for another few seconds, then nodded slowly. But he didn't look convinced. Honestly? Neither was I. I just didn't want to admit it. We kept walking. 20 minutes later, Trevor found another one. Same style. Same rough, deliberate cuts. Upside-down arrow. This time on a Douglas fir about 50 yards off the main trail. Okay, I said, stopping. That's weird. It's pointing somewhere. I followed the direction the arrow indicated, southeast, away from our planned route, into thicker, darker timber. The kind of woods where the canopy blocks what little sun exists and the ground stays perpetually damp. No birds, no squirrel chatter. Just quiet. You want to follow it? I asked. Trevor was already moving. I hesitated. Looking back, that was the moment. That single heartbeat where I could have said no, let's stick to the plan and everything would be different. Instead, I adjusted my rifle sling and followed him into the dark. The third arrow appeared after about 15 minutes of bushwhacking. This one was fresher, maybe 6 months old, the wood still pale inside the cut. It pointed downhill toward a small depression, almost like a dry creek bed. And that's where we found the first hole. It wasn't deep, maybe 18 inches. and it had been filled back in, but poorly. The dirt was loose, darker than the surrounding soil. Someone had gone to just enough trouble to cover something, but not enough to hide it from anyone paying attention. "Grab that stick," Trevor said quietly. I handed him a dead branch and he used it to scrape away the top layer. Then he stopped, set the stick down, and reached in with his gloved hand. What he pulled out made my stomach drop. A backpack, not a hunting pack, a day pack. Faded red nylon, the kind a hiker would carry, covered in dirt, one strap torn, zipper crusted with rust. "Oh shit," I breathed. Trevor unzipped it. Inside, a folded rain jacket, a metal water bottle, a multi-tool, and a hunting knife, a buck 110 with a worn leather sheath. The blade was clean, too clean. Someone had taken care of it. "No wallet? No ID?" I asked. Trevor shook his head, turning the pack inside out. "Nothing." We stood there in the cold, staring at the hole, then at each other. I could see my own unease reflected in Trevor's face. "Hikers stash gear sometimes," I said. "Cache supplies for long trips." "In a grave?" He wasn't wrong. The hole was exactly the size and shape of a shallow grave. We should have left, right then, gotten back to the truck and driven straight to the ranger station. But Trevor, he started walking again, following the next arrow. We found 2 more holes in the next hour. The second one contained another pack, this one green, older, with a broken buckle. Inside, a first aid kit, a box of .308 rounds, and a second knife. This one, a cheap folding blade with a chipped tip. The third hole was different, smaller, more carefully dug. Trevor's stick hit something solid after only 6 inches of scraping. A Ziploc bag, sealed tight. Inside, perfectly dry, a driver's license. I took it from him with trembling fingers. The photo showed a man in his mid-30s, sandy hair, friendly smile, blue eyes that crinkled at the corners. The name read, Michael J. Reed, issued in 2016, expired 2020. Michael Reed. I knew that name. "Ben?" Trevor's voice came from very far away. "Ben, what is it?" I couldn't speak for a moment. My mouth had gone completely dry. When I finally got the words out, they sounded like someone else's. 5 years ago, that hiker who vanished on Mount Hood, they searched for 3 weeks, never found a trace. Trevor's face went pale. "You're sure?" "I remember the news. His wife, she kept doing interviews for years, pleading for information." We both looked down at the hole, at the Ziploc bag, at the smiling face of a dead man. "Ben, we need to go, now." I was already shoving the license into my jacket pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. Yeah, we're gone." We turned and started back the way we came. That's when I saw the footprint. It was pressed into a patch of mud near the base of a tree, a boot print, heavy tread, size 12 at least, and it was directly on top of our own tracks, overlapping them, facing the same direction we had come from. Someone had walked this exact path after us. Trevor saw me staring and followed my gaze. His breath caught. "Run," he said. We ran. The sun was dying fast. November in Oregon gives you maybe until 4:30 before the light starts bleeding out of the sky, and we were still a mile from the truck, maybe more. The forest had closed in around us, all gray trunks and black shadows, and every sound we made, every snapped twig, every heavy breath seemed amplified 10 times over. Then I heard something that wasn't us. A branch cracked, off to the left, maybe 40 yards. I froze, bringing the Remington up. Trevor crashed to a stop beside me, his own rifle rising. We stood back to back, scanning the trees, hearts hammering so loud, I swear you could hear them echoing off the bark. Nothing moved. "Maybe a deer," Trevor whispered. "Yeah." Neither of us believed it. We started moving again, slower now, trying to be quiet. The truck was close. I could practically smell the exhaust, the faint oil and gas scent of civilization. just a little further. And then I saw him, between two massive firs, maybe 60 feet ahead. A figure, tall, broad shoulders, wearing a dark green jacket, the kind the Forest Service issues, a wide-brimmed hat, standing perfectly still, watching us. My rifle was up before I made a conscious decision to move. The scope found him, and I could see details now. Weathered face, gray stubble, eyes that caught the dying light in a way that made my skin crawl. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there. "Whoa!" Trevor yelled. "Hey, we see you!" Nothing. I could feel sweat running down my back despite the cold. My finger rested on the trigger guard, not on the trigger, not yet, but close. Every instinct I had was screaming. The man slowly raised one hand. I couldn't tell if it was a greeting or if he was holding something. The light was too bad, the shadows too deep, but the movement, that slow, deliberate lift, sent a bolt of pure ice through my chest. "Ben?" Trevor's voice cracked. I fired. Not at him. Into the air. The crack of the Remington shattered the silence like a physical thing, echoing off the mountains, sending birds exploding from trees I hadn't even known were occupied. When I looked back, the figure was gone. Go. We ran harder than I've ever run in my life. Branches whipped my face, my lungs burned. I could hear Trevor crashing along behind me, swearing, gasping. Neither of us looked back. The truck appeared through the trees like a miracle. I ripped the driver's door open, threw the rifle in, cranked the engine. Trevor tumbled into the passenger seat, and I didn't even wait for his door to close before I floored it. Gravel sprayed. The Ford fishtailed, found traction, and launched us down the forest road. For 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. We just drove. The trees blurred past. The sky went from gray to black. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. When the first bar of cell service flickered onto my phone, I pulled over and called 911. The police found 5 more holes, 5 more backpacks, 7 more IDs. They arrested the man 3 days later. Roy Braddock, 58 years old, a Forest Service employee for 31 years, quiet, kept to himself. Neighbors said he was odd but harmless. In his cabin, 12 miles from where we'd been camping, they found a wall, a literal wall, covered with photographs, driver's licenses, maps, and those same upside-down arrows drawn in red marker. Lines connecting points, dates, names, 23 victims over 14 years. Braddock confessed to everything, calmly, like he was explaining how to maintain a chainsaw. He told investigators he marked the trails so he could check on them later, so he wouldn't lose track of where he'd left them. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The trail Trevor and I followed, those arrows, they didn't lead to the bodies. They led away from his cabin, a loop, a circuit, a path designed to bring someone deeper and deeper into the woods, further from the road, further from help. We were walking his hunting route, the route he'd prepared for the next one. I don't hunt anymore. Sold everything except the Remington, which I keep in a locked case under my bed. I moved to a condo in downtown Portland, 5th floor, no trees in sight from my window. I sleep with a light on in the hallway. Every November, I book a motel room on the coast and listen to the ocean instead of the wind. Trevor and I don't talk about it. We still meet for beers sometimes, but there's a weight between us now. A shared knowledge that sits heavy and cold. 2 weeks after the arrest, I was cleaning out the F-150 to sell it. Couldn't stand to drive it anymore. Too many memories and the smell of the upholstery. I was vacuuming the driver's side door pocket when I saw it. A small mark carved into the plastic panel, hidden behind where the seatbelt retracts. Almost invisible unless you were looking. An upside-down arrow. I don't know if it was always there. I don't know if I just never noticed. I don't know if Braddock had been in my truck or if it was just a random scratch that my brain, primed for terror, interpreted as something more. The police said it was nothing. A coincidence. Maybe from the factory, maybe from a previous owner. I threw the truck up on Craigslist the next day and took the first lowball offer. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind rattles my window and the city feels too quiet, I wonder. I wonder if Roy Braddock had other trails, other marks, other hunters who never knew they were being hunted. I wonder if that arrow was his way of saying, I know where you live. And I wonder, really wonder, if I'll ever stop looking over my shoulder when I walk past a tree. I don't think I will. I've never told this story to anyone except the police and my therapist, not to my coworkers, not to my buddies from college, not even to my mom. It happened 2 years ago, the last weekend of October, and I still check my car's back seat before getting in. Every single time. Look, I'm not a superstitious guy. I work in IT, systems administrator for a mid-sized cloud services company in Seattle. I deal in logic, in ones and zeros, in problems that have solutions if you just troubleshoot long enough. What happened in Gifford-Pinchot National Forest had no solution. It still doesn't. Nina was the one who pushed for the trip. Nature therapy, she called it. We'd been together for almost 4 years, but the last 6 months had been rough. I was working 60-hour weeks remotely. She was buried in freelance design projects, and we'd become roommates who occasionally had sex. She thought 3 days in the woods would reset us. I thought it sounded like a cold, wet pain in the ass, but I loved her. So I loaded up the Subaru Outback with our gear and drove south on I-5 toward Gifford-Pinchot. The plan was simple: park at the end of Forest Road 23, hike about a mile in on an unmarked trail she'd found on some hiking forum, and set up camp on a clearing that was supposedly pristine and secluded. Looking back now, I should have paid attention to the word secluded. In horror movies, secluded means nobody will hear you scream. In real life, it means exactly the same thing. We got to the trailhead around 4 in the afternoon. Late October in Washington means the sun's already thinking about quitting for the day. The sky was the color of a dirty dish sponge, and that fine, persistent drizzle, the kind that doesn't look like much but soaks you to the bone in 20 minutes, was coming down steady. Temperature was maybe 45 degrees. Perfect camping weather if you're a penguin. The hike in was quiet, not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. No birds, no squirrels rustling in the underbrush, nothing. Just the sound of our boots squelching in the mud and the drip, drip, drip of water off the Douglas firs. Nina noticed it too. "Kinda dead in here, huh?" she said, adjusting the strap of her Osprey pack. "Probably just the weather," I said. "Animals are smarter than us. They're hunkered down somewhere dry." She didn't look convinced, but she let it go. We found the clearing after about 40 minutes of walking. It was exactly what the forum post promised: a flat, open space, maybe 40 feet across, surrounded by old-growth firs that blocked the wind. In the center, there was a fire ring made of blackened stones. Someone had been here before. Good sign, I thought. If other people camp here, it's safe. I'm an idiot. We set up the tent, an MSR Hubba NX, bright orange, practically brand new. I'd bought it for this trip after reading approximately 400 reviews. 2-person, lightweight, double-wall construction. The kind of tent that says, "I am a serious outdoorsman," while actually saying, "I have a desk job and this is my 3rd camping trip ever." We threw our sleeping bags inside, mine a Marmot Trestles 30, hers a Nemo Disco 15, along with our headlamps, a couple of paperbacks, and the bear canister with our food. "Should we do the bear hang now, or after dinner?" I asked. Nina was already pulling out the MSR pocket rocket stove. "After. I need tea. I'm freezing." That was the moment before everything went sideways. The last normal thing I remember. We boiled water from our Nalgene's, made herbal tea, and sat on a fallen log near the fire ring. The drizzle had stopped, replaced by a creeping fog that moved between the trees like it had somewhere to be. I remember thinking it was almost beautiful in a Stephen King kind of way. Nina was talking about work, some nightmare client who wanted 17 revisions on a logo, and I was nodding along, letting her voice wash over me. This was good. This was what we needed. Just us, the woods, no cell service, no Slack notifications. We should do the water run before it gets completely dark, I said, checking my Garmin watch. 5:47 p.m. Sunset was in 40 minutes. The nearest water source was a creek about 150 yards west of the clearing, down a gentle slope. We'd passed it on the way in. 2 minutes there, 2 minutes to fill the bottles in the dromedary bag, 2 minutes back, 7 minutes, tops. Together? Nina asked. I almost made a joke about her being scared of the dark forest. Thank God I didn't. Yeah, together. Stretch our legs before we hunker down. We left the headlamps in the tent, still light enough to see, and walked toward the creek, our boots crunching on wet pine needles. The fog was getting thicker, pooling in the low spots. By the time we reached the water, I could barely see the clearing behind us. We filled the 4-liter MSR dromedary bag in both Nalgene's, the sound of the creek masking everything else. Nina said something about the water being energetically clean, which was her woo-woo designer way of saying it tasted good. I just wanted to get back to the tent and crawl into my sleeping bag. The walk back took maybe 3 minutes, that's all. 3 minutes. I saw it before Nina did. The tent, our bright orange, impossible to miss tent, was zipped shut, both doors, completely sealed. Did you zip it when we left? I asked, already knowing the answer. Nina stopped walking. No, I left my door open. You know I hate fumbling with the zipper in the dark. My stomach did this weird little flip, not fear yet, just confusion. Maybe the wind. But there was no wind. The fog hung completely still, like the forest was holding its breath. Probably the fabric just settled, I said, the words tasting stupid even as I said them. Nylon does that, shifts with temperature changes. Nina didn't respond. She was staring at the tent. I walked up to my door and grabbed the zipper pull. It moved easily, too easily. And then I noticed something that made the hair on my arm stand up. The zipper was on the inside. Both sliders were at the top of the door, inside the tent. Someone had zipped it from within. That's not possible, I heard myself say. Elliot, open it. I pulled the zipper down. The sound was obscenely loud in the quiet. The door flap fell open. The tent was empty, but not untouched. Our sleeping bags, mine and Nina's, had been pulled from their stuff sacks and piled in the center of the tent floor. Not neatly folded, crumpled, like someone had been lying on them, lying on both of them at once. And on top of the pile, held down by Nina's headlamp, was a piece of cardboard, torn from something, a food box maybe. On it, written in what looked like charcoal or burnt wood, in shaky, deliberate capital letters, "You took my place. Now you sleep outside." Nina made a sound I'd never heard her make before. A small, wet gasp, like she'd been punched in the throat. I dropped to my knees and stuck my head inside the tent. The smell hit me immediately. Body odor, wood smoke, and something else. Something sour and organic like rotting leaves and old sweat. It was the smell of a person who hadn't showered in weeks, months maybe. "There's no one here," I said, my voice cracking. "There's no one fucking here." But there had been, minutes ago, while we were at the creek. Someone had been inside our tent, lying on our sleeping bags, writing us a note. I backed out and stood up. My hands were shaking, actually visibly shaking. I looked at Nina. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and fixed on the tree line. "Elliot," she whispered, "we need to leave. Right now." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the sun was almost down. The fog was getting worse by the minute, and hiking a mile through unfamiliar forest in the dark, with whatever was out there watching us, seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. "It's almost dark," I said. "We'll never find the trail in this fog. We wait until first light." I don't know if that was the right call. I still don't know. But it was the call I made. We didn't sleep. Not even close. I pulled out my Benchmade Griptilian knife, a birthday present from my dad, never used for anything more serious than opening Amazon packages, and kept it in my right hand. Nina had her own knife, a smaller CRKT she used for cutting rope and cheese. We sat in the tent, backs against our packs, facing opposite doors. The headlamps stayed on, red mode to preserve night vision. Outside, the fog pressed against the tent walls like it was trying to get in. Around 9 o'clock, I did a perimeter check. Stupid, I know. Every horror movie ever made has the guy checking the perimeter and finding nothing right before he finds everything. But I had to know. I unzipped the door, fast, in case someone was standing right there, and stepped out into the cold. The clearing was empty. I walked a slow circle around the tent, knife ready, headlamp beam, cutting weak white lines through the fog. Nothing. No footprints except ours, no broken branches, no sign that anyone had ever been here except us. But the note was real. I could still smell the sour human stink inside the tent. I got back inside and zipped both doors, top to bottom, checked them twice. "That's not going to stop anyone," Nina said quietly. "It's nylon. A child could cut through it." She was right, but the zipper made me feel better. The illusion of a barrier. Around midnight, I must have dozed off for a few minutes because I woke up with a jolt, my heart hammering, convinced I'd heard something. Nina was still awake, staring at the tent wall. "You hear that?" I whispered. She nodded. Footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps on wet leaves. Crunch, pause, circling the tent, coming from the tree line, moving clockwise around us. I gripped the knife so hard my knuckles ached. The footsteps got closer, closer, and then they stopped. Right outside my door. Maybe 3 feet away. The nylon wall was thin enough that I could see the faint glow of my headlamp reflecting off the fog outside. If someone was standing there, they'd be a dark silhouette against that glow. There was no silhouette, but I heard breathing, slow, heavy, wet, like a person with a chest cold, right there, on the other side of a millimeter of orange nylon. Nina grabbed my arm. Her nails dug in hard enough to leave marks I'd find the next morning. The breathing continued for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. Then the footsteps started again, continuing their slow circle, moving away, fading back toward the tree line. Neither of us spoke. We just sat there, shaking, waiting for dawn. The footsteps came back twice more that night. Once around 2 a.m., once around 3:15. I know because I was watching my Garmin's glowing face like it was a countdown clock to salvation. Each time, the same pattern. Slow approach, pause outside the tent, heavy breathing, slow retreat. By 5 a.m., I was a wreck. My eyes burned, my hands ached from gripping the knife, and I'd developed a twitch in my left eyelid that wouldn't stop. Nina was curled into a ball, her knife still in her hand, her eyes open but unfocused. "We're leaving at first light," I said. "I don't care if we have to crawl. We're gone." First light came around 6:45. Gray, miserable, fog still thick, but now illuminated enough to see more than 10 feet. I unzipped the tent door, my hand trembling so badly I could barely grip the zipper, and stepped out. And then I saw it. Every single piece of our gear that had been outside the tent was gone from where we'd left it. The stove, the cook set, the water filter, my boots. I'd left them under the vestibule. Nina's trekking poles. All of it. I looked up, and there it was. Hung from the branches of the surrounding Douglas firs, at various heights, some low enough to touch, some 15 feet up, were our belongings. Nina's Patagonia jacket dangled from a branch like a headless body. My Osprey pack swayed gently 20 feet away, suspended by its shoulder straps. The stove was tied to a branch with what looked like fishing line. My boots hung by their laces, slowly turning in the non-existent breeze. It was like someone had decorated the clearing, like a fucked-up Christmas tree. Nina came out behind me and made that sound again, the punched throat sound. "Elliot," she said, "the tent." I turned around. The tent was zipped shut, both doors, from the inside. We had just walked out of it, 10 seconds ago. There was no one else inside. I felt something cold run down my spine. Not fear, something beyond fear, something primal. And then I saw it. Through the fog, at the edge of the clearing, maybe 40 feet away, a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like layers of dark, filthy clothing, standing completely still between two massive fir trees, watching us. No face, just a dark oval where a face should be. I don't remember making the decision to run. My legs just went. Go, move, now. I grabbed Nina's wrist and pulled. She stumbled, then found her feet, and we ran. Not toward the figure, away from it, toward the trail, toward the car. The forest was a blur of gray and green and brown. Branches whipped my face, my sock feet. I was wearing my camp shoes, thin, useless things, slipped on wet pine needles. Behind us, I heard it, not footsteps, something worse, laughter, low, rumbling, almost conversational. You took my place. The voice was everywhere, in front of us, behind us. It didn't sound angry. It sounded corrective, like a parent explaining a rule to a child who should have known better. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. Nina was right behind me, her breathing ragged, her hand still locked in mine. The trail was impossible to see in the fog, but I just kept going downhill, trusting that downhill meant toward the road. Branches cracked somewhere to our left. Close. Too close. Now you sleep outside. I saw the car. The beautiful, stupid, silver Subaru Outback, sitting exactly where we'd left it. 300 yards, 200, 100. My hand went to my pocket for the keys. Empty. I'd left them in the tent, in my pants pocket, in the tent that was now zipped from the inside. No, no, no. I patted my jacket. My other pocket. Nothing. Nina was already at the car, yanking on the door handle. Locked. And then I remembered. The spare. The magnetic hide-a-key box under the rear bumper. My dad had insisted. "You'll thank me someday," he'd said. "Dad, if you ever read this, thank you." I dropped to my knees in the mud, fumbled under the bumper, and felt the cold metal box, ripped it off, opened it. The key fell into my palm. Hands shaking so hard I could barely aim, I hit the unlock button. The Subaru's lights flashed. Nina threw herself into the passenger seat. I dove into the driver's seat, slammed the door, hit the lock button. The engine turned over on the first try. Thank Christ for Japanese engineering. I threw it into reverse, spun us around, and floored it down the forest road. Gravel sprayed. Branches scraped the sides of the car. In the rearview mirror, at the edge of the clearing, where the road bent out of sight, I saw the figure again. Standing in the middle of the trail, watching us go. Not chasing, just watching. I didn't stop driving until we hit paved road. Even then, I kept going. Nina was crying, silent, steady tears streaming down her face. I wasn't crying. I was beyond crying. I was in some kind of shock where everything felt far away and too close at the same time. About 12 miles from the trailhead, my phone buzzed, 1 bar of signal. I pulled over, hands still trembling, and dialed 911. The operator was calm, professional. "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" I tried. The words came out in fragments. Tent, zipped. Note, stuff in trees, man watching. "Stay where you are, sir. I'm dispatching a deputy from Skamania County Sheriff's Office. Do not go back into the woods." Like I needed to be told. The deputy arrived 40 minutes later. A guy named Reynolds, late 40s, faced like he'd seen too much and said too little. He listened to our story, took notes, and then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You were on the clearing with the old fire ring, weren't you? About a mile in, off FR 23? "Yes," Nina said. "How did you know?" Deputy Reynolds sighed, rubbed his jaw. "There's a man, local transient, been living in these woods for 6, 7 years now. Harmless, mostly. But he's got this idea in his head that that particular clearing belongs to him. Calls himself the Keeper. We've had reports before, Moved gear, creepy notes, folks getting spooked in the night. Never violent, just territorial. Never violent? I heard my voice go high and tight. He was breathing outside our tent at 3 a.m. Like I said, never hurt anyone. We've tried to pick him up a few times, but he knows these woods better than we do. Disappears into the backcountry for months at a stretch. We'll send a team out to the clearing, see if we can find him. They didn't find him. They didn't find anything. No footprints, no gear in the trees, no note, just the tent, still zipped from the inside, completely empty. Deputy Reynolds called me 3 days later. We processed the site. Nothing. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. Sometimes the woods just keep their secrets. That was 2 years ago. Nina and I tried to make it work. We really did. But every time I zipped up a jacket, she flinched. Every time she heard footsteps outside our apartment door, she froze. The thing in the woods had followed us home, not in any supernatural way, but in the way that real trauma does. It lived in the space between us, in the silences, in the nights when neither of us could sleep. She moved out 3 months later. You never really came back from that clearing, she said. She was right. I sold the Subaru, bought a Honda Civic, moved from our rental house in the suburbs to a high-rise apartment in downtown Seattle, 13th floor, keycard access, security cameras everywhere. I sleep with a lamp on. I double-check every lock twice before bed. I haven't been camping since. I don't even like parks. My therapist says I have PTSD, classic symptoms, hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, avoidance behaviors. She's probably right. She's also never spent a night in the Gifford Pinchot, listening to something breathe on the other side of a millimeter of nylon. Here's the thing I can't explain, the thing that keeps me up at night, even now. About a week after we got back, I was cleaning out the Subaru before selling it. I opened the glove box to check for old registration papers, and something fell out, a small piece of cardboard, torn from a food box. On it, in shaky charcoal letters, mine. I don't know how it got there. The car was locked the entire time we were in the woods. The glove box was closed. No one had access to the vehicle except me and Nina. I don't know how he knew which car was ours. I don't know how he got inside. I don't know if he's still out there, on that clearing, waiting for the next couple with an orange MSR tent and a need for nature therapy. I don't know anything. Except this. I will never, ever go back into those woods. And sometimes, when I'm lying in my 13th floor apartment with the city lights glowing through the blinds, I swear I can hear breathing outside my door. Just breathing, waiting for me to come outside. I still don't know what happened out there, and honestly, I don't want to.